can't capture by the microphone.
All right. Ready? Okay. Well, are we all set on the camera? Okay, great. Hello, welcome to the session. I'm Eric Gouvin from Western New England College School of Law.
And I'm Nicholas Georgakopoulos.
Oops. Sorry.
Eric will be speaking on using PowerPoint, and I'll be speaking on not using PowerPoint. And I'll be with you later.
Okay, and I have a text for this lesson. I don't have enough for everyone, I don't believe, but those of you who don't get a copy, I think will be able to muddle through without it. So if you take it, maybe every other one, this would be part of the presentation. Let me give you a little background. I've been using PowerPoint in my classes for the last couple of years. I've authored a couple CALI lessons, and I use CALI lessons in class every now and then as well. And by trial and error, I've picked up a few lessons about what works and what doesn't work, at least for me. It may not be true for you. You may have a whole different take on it, but I wanted to share with you some thoughts after coming for several years to these CALI meetings and seeing sessions like XML versus cold fusion. Is it the next wave? And scratching my head, and what the heck does that mean? Nicholas and I thought someday it would be nice to have a session for professors, primarily for professors or other people who are involved in classroom instruction, about useful technology in the classroom. So I hope this is that session. So you got the text. The text is going around. The text is designed to show you how not to use PowerPoint. So let's say we could step back into the Wayback Machine and go back to November 19th, 1863, where Abraham Lincoln is giving an important address. Luckily, he's got presentation software to help him along. Now, I didn't invent this. This comes off the internet, but it's I think, a very effective way to show the shortcomings of PowerPoint. Let me just get this thing working here, make sure everything's all set. Okay. All right, I'm glad everyone could make it today. We're here to dedicate the cemetery here at Gettysburg. Specifically, we're meeting on this battlefield, which is a great thing. Kind of great battle was held here. And we're going to dedicate a portion of the field to the people who fell in battle, and that's really quite fitting. The people who died on this battlefield left many things undone, and they're great tasks that needs to be taken care of. There are some things we're not going to be talking about today. We're not going to really be able to dedicate this field any more horrifically than the people who died here, nor can we really hope to consecrate it in any meaningful way above and beyond the sacrifice that's been already made on this field. I would like to remind you that this is hallowed ground. Hallowed ground. And really what we say today can't really add or detract at all from the ultimate sacrifice made by the men on this battlefield. And a few people will probably remember what we say anyway. So let's just keep to the business at hand, shall we? Let's review the key objectives and critical success factors of this lesson. We're reminded at this great moment of sorrow that this is a unique nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. And we're bound by this shared vision that there's a new birth of freedom rooted in the people, government by, for, and of the people, if we're lucky, shall never perish from the earth. Consider where we were 87 years ago, or 4 score and 7. One new nation was what came on the scene, dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now, none. Okay. So in summary, let me just conclude by saying we're a new nation. We're in the midst of a great and horrific civil war. Can't forget that. We're here to dedicate the field. Dedicate it, that is, to the unfinished work of the men who died here, because there's a new birth of freedom, that the government shall not perish. Thank you very much. Now, what's the lesson there? The lesson, first of all, is the Internet's a great place to find entertaining things to do if you have time on your hands. I don't know who invented that little bit, but it's, I think, a very nice teaching tool. That's how you don't use PowerPoint. If your text is the Gettysburg Address, use your text. This is plenty powerful on its own to carry a class session, and the visuals, not anything. In fact, they took away a great deal. If you are interested in using PowerPoint, will eventually learn these lessons yourself. So here are some lessons I learned. PowerPoint shouldn't be a teleprompter. In some early versions of my own slides, that's what it turned out to be. It turned out to me putting my notes in a PowerPoint slide and boring the heck out of the class and tripping up my own timing by basically reading stuff like the outcome of a particular game and game theory or what a Nash equilibrium is. This, I think, doesn't work. And if this is what your fears about PowerPoint are, well, these fears are well-founded. If you're trying to just convey information by putting bullet point after bullet point or paragraph after paragraph, you're going to bore your students. They're quickly going to realize that they don't need to go to class, and especially if you post your notes on the web, as I do, or post your PowerPoint notes on the web, or if you hand out the slides ahead of time. So you need to make it do what it can do effectively. You don't want to put yourself out of business. If you're the teacher, you want to make them appreciate that there's a value to the classroom situation, there's a value to interacting with the professor and with other students. But I have found that the PowerPoint can supplement that dynamic a bit. How do I use PowerPoint? Really 3 ways. All of my classes have significant texts associated with them. And I find that getting the texts up on the screen often helps in the discussion. Second, I use the presentation software to present drawings that I would have done on the whiteboard. They're usually funnier, clearer, and quicker. And third, I use it to liven up the presentation. So this is especially true in one of my classes. And I see Jennifer Martin here. I've certainly cribbed some of her slides in the past from a course that we both teach on secure transactions. Secure transactions can get a little dry. It's nice to jazz it up every now and then with a PowerPoint slide. Okay, how do I use the statutes? In one of my classrooms, I have a setup just like this. I've got a choice between using the whiteboard and using the overhead. And what have I done? Well, I've created a series of slides that if I just drop the screen this much, I can shoot the restatement section up there, continue to use the whiteboard. For those of you in that situation, I offer that as a solution. I don't put that restatement section up there until the students have told me that's the right restatement section. So it's ready to go. I know that this should come up in the class, so it's not like I have to go through Westlaw and paste it in class time. I know this should come up. So it's ready to go, but I want the students to find it themselves. I don't want to take that away from them. Same thing in a code course. It might be helpful to get the text of a particularly complicated section up. And once the students have identified that this is an important citation, using a laser pointer, you can guide them through particularly important sections or wording. And knowing ahead of time that there are certain key phrases in the statute, you can have a slide prepared to highlight important terms. Now here's a slide that I'm particularly proud of. In Article 9, it's important to know what kind of collateral you're dealing with. Now I don't teach all the different subjects in the curriculum, but I'm sure there are going to be situations in a particular course where you have a laundry list of items that students need to categorize properly. I've set up this slide so that it's hyperlinked to all the specific definitions of all the different types of collateral. So for instance, we have 2 big problems in my secured book where the goal is to go through a bunch of different kinds of collateral and decide, is it consumer goods, is it inventory, is it a general intangible, what have you. And we can, by clicking on these headings, be hyperlinked to the definitions for those particular types of collateral. For the sake of the presentation, I don't have to scroll through a bunch of different slides until I find the right definition. I've got them all here at the point at the end of the cursor, just a click away. And this is very easy to do in PowerPoint. The hyperlinks are very handy. That's how I launched the Gettysburg Address, was through a hyperlink, and these are all hyperlinked back. Okay. So beyond text, I often use drawings. Timelines are especially effective. You help, as you're going in class and you're trying to tease the facts out of a student, you can put them up as the student comes up with the information. Again, if you've taught the class before, you know what the timeline looks like. It's not like there's going to be new things that come out. If you have a timeline for a case, you can also have in your back pocket a what-if scenario. What if we change around the timing or throw in a different fact? This is probably a set piece that you already had prepared anyway. You know, they're in your notes. You're going to try to get them to do this maybe on the board. You can do it on PowerPoint. It has the added benefit of being a little more legible for the people in the way back. I always try to draw little pictures to get the students to appreciate what's going on. Here's one from Secure Transactions showing the various kinds of financing relationships that Acme Inc. has with people who may be involved one way or another in the Article 9 scheme. I think when I actually use this slide, I have it animated, so different lenders come in and you can see the back and forth over time. I draw maps on the board. Most of us draw pretty pathetic maps when asked to do so on command at freehand. This is a pretty pathetic map too, but it's pre-packaged in the slide. This comes from Howell Jackson. Just another example. Why do I put this one in here? Because it's got goofy stuff in it. Now, one of the classic rules of PowerPoint is, oh, don't use cheesy clip art. I like cheesy clip art, and I sometimes try to find the cheesiest clip art I can find just to put it in there, because the students get a kick out of it. The students are very sophisticated about this stuff, and either you got to do stuff that's dead on professional, or go the other way and make it really cheesy, and they like that. Complicated transactions, easily diagrammed here without lots of errant chalk dust or that dangerously toxic whiteboard marker stuff getting on your hands. Here's a letter of credit transaction. Here's the actual transaction, and then this is one of the situations where livening it up might help. The goods get shipped. And after we've just been slogging through a topic that's pretty hard for most students, to see that stupid ship make that honking noise across the screen, it relieves them a little bit. You don't want to overdo it, but it's nice that every now and then to lighten things up. I have found that graphs can be a challenge in the classroom. Getting things to line up properly and whatnot. So with a series of PowerPoint slides, you can have your whole presentation ready to roll. Different kinds of shading help. You can easily change, make circles around things and really drive the point home. If students didn't get it, you can scroll back, change the elasticity of the demand curve and show what happens to the dead weight loss. All this stuff can be done very neatly and cleanly, and I think in a way that improves the communication with the class. You don't change the content at all. It's not like this is wagging the dog. This is something I would have taught anyway, but I would have been much less efficient at it. And of course, I think that the best example of that idea is when numbers are involved. So I teach courses in corporate finance and secure transactions and banking regulation. Again, this is something from Howell Jackson. But if you're dealing with lots of numbers on the board and you're changing them from one scenario to the next, that gets very confusing to the students very quickly. You often make mistakes, or I have made mistakes when I'm trying to do it on the fly. Having a nice set of slides that illustrate the points makes more sense. So here we're comparing 3 different strategies. Bring it here all together. The students have enough trouble with numbers where if you can make it simpler, if you can make the actual presentation of the information simpler, so much the better. Okay, finally, the last big topic that I use PowerPoint for is to liven up the presentation. How can you do it? Stuff you couldn't ordinarily do in your traditional classroom without presentation software. Pictures, software, movies. So here's the famous carbolic smoke ball case, right? Here's the ad that created that unilateral offer. There's Mrs. Carlile themselves. I think I got this off from you, Scott. And Scott Burnham as the brains behind the AALS contract section, has a nice website where some of these visual elements are available. We have also pictures of places where things actually happened, like a mistake case, whatnot. In banking regulation, I had this whole thing about the evolution of money. It's nice that you can make little annotations on the pictures. And then you can throw in popular culture references. So who knew? Who knew the deep allegorical meaning behind all the characters in The Wizard of Oz? And this is relevant to teaching a course in banking regulation for the populist roots of the free silver movement and whatnot. You know, Dorothy's shoes originally were silver shoes. I don't know if you know that. He was walking along the golden path to Washington. Okay, and then what else can you do? Sounds. I used to hum the theme to Dragnet when we got to Dragnet clauses.
The story we're about to see is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Okay. Secure transactions, again. Any silly thing you do gets you some points with the students, even if it's something as silly as the repo code.
I shall not cause harm to any vehicle or the personal contents thereof, nor through inaction let that vehicle or the personal contents thereof come to harm. That's what I call the repo code, kid. Don't forget it, etch it in your brain. Not many people got codes to live by anymore.
Of course, this is a code course, and this is from that famous movie Repo Man. The two repo men are in the car snorting cocaine and talking about the ethics of repossessing cars. Movies are handy. In the beginning of contracts, I do a little exercise called Rules for Monica, which is from Charles Calero at Arizona State, where you have this student, this high school student, and her mom have some run-ins about how late she can stay out. And it's designed to get students to think about the legal method in a non-legal context. What was Monica's mom talking about? What's the actual rule of behavior that Monica's supposed to follow? So you play this this little movie clip, and it has the scenario. And then after you play the clip, I don't have time to play the whole clip. After you play the clip, you get a discussion about what were the relevant facts, what were the concerns, the policy concerns that the mom had, and then finally, what's the holding? The facts are pretty standard. I have just a slide set up for the facts because the students aren't going to invent new facts or find new facts that weren't relevant. But the holdings they come up with, I don't want to interrupt the flow of the discussion by having them say, well, no, that's a good one, but the first holding that I had on my list was this. I want the holdings to come forward from the class as they are spontaneously generated. So how do I get around that in the context of a PowerPoint presentation? I punt. I toggle over to a word processing program, and I'm ready to type in the holdings as they're presented by the class. But I cheat, because I know there's about 5 different ways to look at this problem. And I know at some point all 5 of those are going to come up on the board. And so I've got little macros set out for myself. So macro 1 is Monica violated the rule by staying out past 11. Monica's hanging out at the pizza parlor, and so forth. So I have these all set. It looks like I'm spontaneously responding to the students who've come up with these particular suggestions, but I'm not wasting time typing it in. Now, it happens every time that some student comes up with a different take on it, and that's great. You don't want to squelch that. So I can type in, Monica is a terrorist. Type something like that in response to an actual response from the classroom, so I don't have to have them keyed into my lockstep linear approach of CALI. Of PowerPoint. Okay, another thing to liven up the class, I have some set pieces that I can use in different classes on game theory, on adverse selection, the market for lemons, a couple of other things that come up over and over again. And here you can use PowerPoint to good effect, I think. First, the graphics and the numbers, trying to get across the classic prisoner's dilemma. It's better to cooperate than to defect. What's an example of that? The bank run scene from It's a Wonderful Life. If only they could all cooperate, the payoff would be better for everyone. But instead, what do you have? You have this guy, Tom, in a minute, wanting all his money at once. That's the bad guy.
No, but you're thinking of this place all wrong. As if I have the money back in a safe. The money's not here. Well, your money's in Joe's house. That's right next.
I've always brought this clip up when I've taught bank regulation before I started using this. It's so much more effective to have it there. It's just 2 or 3 minutes of video. Very easy to insert it in a PowerPoint slide if you have a device that can digitize the video. Wonderful Life is in the public domain, believe it or not. So then we take it from there and now turn it into the game theory matrix that we were just talking about, but now specifically connected to this example. How do we change the dilemma, change the payoffs? So those are some effective way. I promised Nick that I would only speak for 25 minutes. I think I have. Okay.
This is so entertaining that I think I should shorten my presentation.
Okay. So what else do I do with CALI lessons? I've authored a CALI lesson on a topic that's almost never covered in the casebooks. And why? Because it's not very intellectually interesting. It's about the mechanics of incorporation. And there's just not a lot of heavy intellectual lifting going on with it. Nevertheless, most of my students are going to practice law. Some are going to need to know how to form a corporation. So I thought a CALI lesson that really walked them through the mechanics would be helpful. The heart of this lesson is a series of screens that are replicas of the Massachusetts Articles of Incorporation. The goal that I have for the user of the lesson is to click on the various entries on the form and find out why is each one there? I mean, what's the significance of the state? What's the significance of the Secretary of State's name? What happens if your names are screwed up? And so there's a whole bunch of data here, but I can use this in class as a way to walk the students through the document and talk to them, ask them for feedback on the lesson that they hopefully had completed before they got to class. So that's one way to do CALI in class. You can make up your own lessons, of course. Nicholas has a great CALI lesson about the Coase theorem as a way to bring in some theoretical material in a non-threatening, self-paced way, self-tutorial. I think it's just top-notch. If you haven't seen it, you really should look at it if you get into law and economics at all. So. But I think that's it for me. So. Yeah.
There we go. Before I talk against PowerPoint, I wanted to say that I use PowerPoint in every presentation that I make outside the classroom. But I never use PowerPoint in the classroom. So I was in a very difficult situation when we had a speaker who started by saying there are two types of talks that are thoughtful and talks that are on PowerPoint. So I was torn, didn't know which way to go. So my feel is that there is a tension between presenting something where you know where you're going and how you're going to get there, which was very much along the lines of what Eric was displaying. I know how my timeline is going to look at the end, so I can pre-package that in a PowerPoint presentation where each time point comes with the press of the mouse or the space bar in sequence. But in a classroom that is going to explore out of the ordinary way to reach the outcome, that won't work. What I have been doing is I've been using just sketching software and just replacing the blackboard with that software. And I'm also switching back and forth between websites that have statutes, between Excel, where if the student, for example, we do cumulative voting. I occasionally try and listen to the students. This year I managed to do it, and someone was insisting on that cumulative voting didn't work the way I said it would work. So we opened up Excel and we set up, I asked them, well, how many directors does your corporation have? 9, all right. How many votes are present at the meeting? 900. So now we type 900. We put a little equation, 9 times 900, how many votes we have at the meeting. How many votes, how many shares do you hold? How many shares do I hold? I put my cat as one of the directors I'm nominating, myself, my kids. They get to put their friends and divide now their votes up. That's very hard to do off the cuff on the blackboard, but with Excel it's very easy to plug in the numbers, the names, and then have Excel do the multiplication that will produce the actual vote counts. I use CALI lessons not so much to cover the material, but to cover my thinking behind the right and the wrong answers. Of course, they're supposed to be getting that off of the feedback in the CALI lesson. You'll be surprised how much more you'll find about the thinking process of the student if you have them try and explain to you in the class why they press a different button. I mean, that sounds obvious, but each time I do it, I am stunned. So it's the bottom line for me is that it's a question of style. Well, where you might know where you're going. You are presenting doing a class that's more Socratic, and then you might want to use PowerPoint versus a more where you would not want to use PowerPoint versus a class which again might be Socratic but has a more specific target, or which is a lecture. Now, an additional lesson that I meant to say it will be displayed today here is that I'm using a new technology, these silly tablet PCs. I finally got one off of eBay, and I think it's going to be going right back because it is extremely idiosyncratic on when it does recognize the mouse and when it does not. So I was going to write lecture here, and then I want to explore an additional idea with it, and hopefully I'll be able to patch into Eric's computer back at some point to show you, so that we can show you our email addresses. This, I think, is the choice in giving yourself means to get off of the line that you think the class will take is extremely valuable for scholarship. and has an incredibly important message for the students. That law does not come to them prepackaged. This is not teaching them accounting rules or application of legal rules. This is an exploration of interpretation. And the student who has a good idea and gets a gold Hershey kiss from me is as able to produce a new contribution to our legal environment, our legal system, as am I, as are our judges and lawyers. The students are extremely resistive to accepting that this is a fluid legal system, a fluid world. There's a danger there. You don't want to let them believe that anything goes. But I feel that PowerPoint lets that message slip. As far as trying to display something good about these tablet PCs goes, they zoom. And once they do zoom, that cell phone is just like the PowerPC in that it's very hard for the user to stop the noise for once the user realizes how embarrassing it is. So if I can select my marker again, well, let's try this other one. It won't happen. Never do this again. Okay. Should be able to do. All right, we lost the tablet. Well, in class, I'm using a. I'm letting you plug in our names again. In class, I'm using a Windows C computer that has an 600 by 800 out, VGA out, and it does not have these magnetic, complicated sensors that the tablet PCs have, but a plain old touchscreen sensor, and it works 100% of the time. So I hope that answers the question. As for using the tablet in the future, I won't. But where's my Palm Pilot, which is my only reliable computing device? Where did I put it? Oh. The Palm Pilot it does wonders. In addition to, of course, now you can display the Palm Pilot screen on the display for the students, which is an interesting thing to explore, and we've seen it done in previous CALI conferences. So I don't want us to spend time doing this. And as you're going high tech, a couple of things to remember are fairly obvious. To not use those laser pointers, for example, because I've never seen a laser pointer used effectively. On the other hand, you can go to Office Max and buy a $5 telescopic pointer, which not only can point and dollar for dollar educational value is much more effective than the laser pointer that nobody can see. It also makes a great noise when you tap the screen with that thing, and everybody wakes up. My final note, and I want us to then start our discussion, is that the direction, what I'd like to see is more of the ability to convert the outline that they should produce at the end of class into an infinite zooming based single page, where we'd be able to zoom out and see the 4, 5, 10 headings for the course, and zoom in every class and fill in space next to that with Blackacre and the little person getting in or out of it. Our current graphics programs seem very limited that way. There are some graphics programs that are called vector-based, and those are supposed to not depend on resolution. They have not gotten to the point where we could do such a thing, have that infinite zooming ability. The students have this extraordinary need for closure at the end of class, and a great technological trick that improves that is to have your Palm Pilot beep 5 minutes before the end of class, every class. It's very easy to set the recurring appointment for the end of class every week, and if that beeps 5 minutes before the time that your class ends, you realize you're running out of time, you can come back to what you were discussing next week, close with the lessons learned today, and continue from there. So I think we were looking to have a discussion and an exchange of ideas and practices now, so I'm opening it to that.
Obviously, your team around you support you using these technologies. Do they give you release time to develop either course plans, or do you just do it in your own time, or how do you develop your event, your PowerPoint, and then how do you have it PC from that direction?
My dean is all for it, and one of the ways that the dean has supported technology in the classroom is to bring several of our classrooms up to state of the art, and he finds the money for that. I didn't have any release time. I have found that people have been more than forthcoming with slides of their own. So, for instance, Paul Jackson at Harvard, in connection with the banking law, he was more than happy to give me his slides. I used some, I modified others, I added my own. My colleague Jennifer Martin was very forthcoming with hers. Much of this stuff doesn't take that much time. So for instance, what I mostly use is text. And what I do is I'm sitting at my desktop in the office. I've got PowerPoint open and I've got Westlaw open. I just cut and paste out of Westlaw into a PowerPoint slide. It literally takes seconds. Depending on what you want to do with it, it won't necessarily require a huge investment of time. But it could.
Spectrum is sublime to be absurd. It's just like someone will camp out and request release time, and other people do it. Techno savvy,
My answer is the opposite. The reason I don't use PowerPoint in class is that I think the time required to set up a good PowerPoint presentation is huge. And I teach, I think the contribution of displaying things automatically is being able to display pictures and graphics. And those are very hard to produce and time them. What Eric's presentation has been cobbled together, but it's a presentation that I think you must have spent, if you add up this time, at least 10 hours on, right?
Today?
Right.
These are all pulled from various lessons that were already prepared.
But each slide, though, already prepared. How long did each slide take you to prepare way back when? And if we add all that time, it ends up to a lot. So, warning untenured faculty, don't jump onto PowerPoint if you think it's going to take up that much of your time. And always be mindful of your time. The drawing software is great because you can do the graphics if you're willing to draw. Now, the reason I was liking this, I was warm to the idea of using new tablet PC technology was that this Corel Graphico program converts ugly squares that are hand-drawn to nice straight squares, and ugly circles to nice round circles, which is an advantage it would have been an advantage if the screen were consistent in its sensitivity. As it is, I make do with ugly squares and ugly circles. The students don't mind it, but I also think that drawing on the board reveals the layers that take additional time to make appear in PowerPoint. So when I would draw the timeline on the sketchboard, each notch would go in after the previous one in the classroom discussion, and that reveals the same dynamic that my colleague who has done this on PowerPoint has spent half an hour to put on PowerPoint. So I think the time concern is huge, and that's one of the reasons why I'm going to.
Now, having developed these sets of slides, I've got them in the bank. Article 9 may change. I may have to change some slides, but the code is going to be the code for a while now. They just revised it. So because I'm trying to find a way to appeal to some other learners in my classroom, it was just this a study done that was published in Nature about the Game Boy generation. Have video games and whatnot caused a whole generation to be harmed, or were there some benefits that come out from various new ways of perceiving? And the study focused on college males who played a certain amount of video games a week. They couldn't find enough women who had had that experience, so they focused on men. They shoot them up. They're very keyed in visually, and I think what we're finding, we're going to find in the first couple decades of this century that the students that are in our classroom that's how they expect to be instructed. That's how they expect the classroom experience to be. They want a visual component to it, and that's what I'm shooting for. It's not my whole class. I definitely wouldn't give up the Socratic method to become beholden to PowerPoint. But I think the PowerPoint slides, the way I've suggested to use them, things that you would have put up on the board anyway, I've saved time. Nicholas is worried about me putting time into PowerPoint. I would have spent that much time finding last year's drawing that is in the file someplace. I don't know exactly where, but it's not with my notes because I'm a pretty bad file keeper.
My personal intention is to book and tear it out. Bottom line. So that if you know your material, if you know your background, and you have the tool as you do with PowerPoint, or you have the tool if it's with wanting to accessorize and wanting to draw and willing to take the jump into the tablet PC. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's the mindset, and gratefully you have games accepting to be able to make those jumps into. But I mean, bottom line, there's no substitute for good teaching. So you're able to pull the stuff from your colleagues, pull the stuff from other clips and pieces and parts put together. But there's the other realm of people who see it as a hazard, it's just another tool.
I think the comment. We're supposed to repeat the comments and we haven't, so we'll try to remember that a little more too. The comment about the hazards, the validity of viewing technology as a hazard to teaching if your teaching is already good is absolutely right. There is a counterpoint in that if you could bring yourself to the level of being comfortable using some programs, the ability to bring them up can be an incredible tool. So my comfort using Excel allowed me to bring Excel up when the student insisted on seeing a more concrete example on cumulative voting. I think there was an incredible amount of learning that happened in those 5 minutes, 10 minutes that it took us to set up the cumulative voting example. If I were wedded to the idea that my teaching will only get hurt by me lugging this silly Windows C thing into class every day and taking the extra 5 minutes before class to plug it in, I wouldn't have that there, or wouldn't have happened. In an analogous way, the ability to bring up the securities laws in the securities class, and then it turns out that some of our classrooms have a beautiful device called Smartboard, which is a rear projection touch screen, big TV. Our smaller classrooms can use this, and then while you're drawing, the students know where your hand is. When you're drawing on your palm, your Windows C computer, the students don't know where you're drawing, and that confuses them a whole lot. Having that there and on and me drawing allowed us to be able to then pop up the securities law section that someone brought up in some question, go through the text, circle the crucial words, discuss its real meaning, and that kind of stuff. So my answer is the hesitation is right, but having the tool there might be incredibly valuable. And if you never hook up the tool, you won't have, you'll never get to use that additional palette that it gives you. Who was first? Did you see what was
I really agree with you, Eric, that there's a great deal of alternative learning that goes on, people who would not capture the idea when you use these alternatives. Two questions. What do you do with the longer statutes? My problem is that PowerPoint can only take a blip, and I get very concerned with cutting that blip, taking it out of context and doing what so many of my students do, which is never reading beyond the period or the comma. But the other is your hyperlinks and your toggling. Does that work fairly seamlessly in class? Would that take a lot of practice to get?
No, it didn't take much practice at all. All it took was the realization that it could be done, and that it was an easy way to solve the problem.
Because I agree with you, you don't always know what's coming next, and it would be nice to be able to sort of pull up as they do it. Like if you know what the timeline is, but you don't want it to come one at a time, if you could literally hyperlink it, so when they say point one, you click on point one and it comes up in the right place, that would solve a lot of my concerns with using it, which is the ones that Nicholas brings up, which is you don't want it tactical. You want them to feel like they're creating the picture for you.
Right, and it's an illusion. I mean, and people say, oh, that cheapens the experience in the classroom, but it's an illusion when I use my notes. I've been down this path before. I have a rough idea what's going to happen in class. The joke that I told is going to be the same joke that they heard 5 years ago.
You see, this is not my experience. Every year there will be at least 2 classes in which we will be down a path that I've never thought of before. And I think this is very important.
When you teach the business judgment rule, it's a brand new experience every time. I sure hope it isn't. That would be like the actor's nightmare, that you get up there and you don't know what play you're in. But anyway, we may be different in the class, but it's all, in a certain sense, it's all showmanship, isn't it? You have to really know your material. You have to care that the students know the material, but you have to present it in a way that's going to connect with them. You don't have to use electronic means, but increasingly I think we're going to find that students expect that and that they connect with it better. I wouldn't throw the whole thing over and go on a completely scripted online. It just wouldn't work, and it would make me feel redundant. But I think there are some relatively low-tech, high-tech ways. Pulling images off the internet. So, for instance, Nicholas, a few years ago you gave me the pictures of the Bristol Hotel, where the famous Meinhardt versus Salmon Now, I've circulated those in hard copy form, and the students really get a kick out of seeing that. Now I just project them on the screen with the computer. Same thing I was doing on a paper-based approach. There's a hand over here and over here.
Develop mechanisms for feedback for students using this. You build into your course evaluations questions about the visual content, and if so, have you learned things from comments that students have changed the ways you work?
It was relating to student feedback on the PowerPoint or other electronic presentations. I haven't systematically developed a new device for getting student feedback. Students have on their evaluations volunteered that they love the PowerPoint. This is a mixed blessing because they've loved the PowerPoint in classes where I thought the PowerPoint got in the way. You know, this is still a work in progress. I'm still learning how I want to use this in my classroom. One of the first times I thought that I showed you those first few slides where I was using it more or less like a teleprompter. I thought that was not an acceptable way to use it. It really deadened, I thought, the class discussion. The students loved it. The students thought that was great. They were wrong. And I had, you know, I'm tenured, so I didn't really, it's not that much riding on it for me. But the students in general like it. You can't use that as the final touchstone for whether it's the effective way to go. I think you've got it. I've had peers sit in on my class and give me feedback on what they've thought of it, and some say, you know, have given good feedback.
Yes, I have something to add about Meinhardt v. Salmon graphics.
I always give you credit.
All right, this is what I was going to show at the beginning of my presentation in order to persuade you after I would be talking about against PowerPoint for 15 minutes that I do use PowerPoint. These are just a couple of slides, a couple of graphics from this Meinhardt v. Salmon case that I wrote about it, and I used it as a basis for analyzing fiduciary obligations. I went to New York, at the New York Public Library. I found the picture of the building about which the case is. The advantage of PowerPoint is that now you can compare it with a building that rose up there after the Salmon renovated the place. You can point out what should be compared between the two pictures. You can, oh, sorry, small detail. Another reason to not. There it is. That's my confession that I do use PowerPoint. Here's the original Bristol Hotel. Here's what went up in its place. Here's how you compare, you point out to the students, or to the audience actually, and never the students in my case, what is the interesting feature to which the building should be compared in order to get to understand the difference in the sizes. You can use graphics to illustrate what additional land Salmon had, the owner of the reversion had bought, so that it was eventually included in the new building. Juxtapose, draw a little Bristol on the old one. Draw the spire that was never built because of the Depression. It would have been taller than the Empire State Building, but I never used it in class.
Oh, I would use that in class. I wish you would send that to me. Yes.
Students who grow up with GameBoy and video, but what do you do in the classroom if they are using the laptop computers and your visuals are not as exciting as the DVDs and other websites that they're going to during your lecture?
The question is, can a professor really compete with the other visual aids that the students might have either through the internet or through DVDs? I hadn't really thought about that. But compared to what they get in other classes, this is better than a poke in the eye.
I'll let Deb, do you have a co-presenter tomorrow, answer that tomorrow, the question tomorrow, yes.
I graduated years ago, and I'm a heavy computer game player, so this is not exactly an academic, this is not exactly an academic issue for me. I went through this. I sat in classrooms that were 60 to 75% full of people on laptops who were multitasking with solitaire and internet and email and instant messaging each other. And I mean, you heard the presentation this morning, the plenary session, where she talked about the top 5 most popular things to do in school are technology related. They're doing all of those in your class while you're talking.
Somebody drinking beer in my class.
So I think really the question that I mean, a lot of people, a lot of professors especially, I feel like now that I'm on the other side of the fence, now that I'm a technology person, I'm supposed to be helping the professors teach. The question that I really find myself asking professors a lot is, how do you plan to compete with that? And a lot of times the answer that I hear is, well, if the students are responsible, they'll pay attention. But the problem is you have, like that study showed, these students have 50% higher, this has been documented, they have 50% higher visual acuity than people who don't have that kind of stimulation. That means 50% of their attention is not being taken up, and their attention is being taken by other things. It has to be consumed by the internet, because it's not possible for your typical law school presentation to occupy all their attention like it used to. And they have to fill in that gap with something. It's as if everybody is hyperactive and has ADD in your classroom. You need to plan for that. And I'm just wondering where you see presentation evolving to be able to keep up with that.
Last place we're as they sit down. No, that's going to be a whole session, isn't it, about competing with the wireless internet. I haven't really found that to be a problem yet. I have no plan.
Thank you very much.
That's part of what we're talking about tomorrow. Live events, live events, live events, live events. So